Part 2. The Path. A disciplined mind invites true joy. The Dhammapada. Translated by Eknath Ishwaran. 9. Finding your balance. Rest without fixations. God Sangpa. Radiant Jewel Lamp. Translated by Elizabeth M. Callahan. Now we will leave the realm of science and theory behind for a while and begin discussing practical application, which in Buddhist terms is referred to as the path. I would like to begin with a story I heard long ago about a man who had been an expert swimmer in his youth and began looking for a challenge in his old age that would be as engaging as swimming had been in his early life. He decided to become a monk, thinking that just as he would master waves of the ocean, he would master the waves of his mind. He found a teacher he respected, took his vows, and began to practice the lessons his teacher gave him. As is often the case, meditation didn't come easily to him. As he went to seek advice from him. So he went to seek advice from his teacher. His teacher asked him to sit and meditate so that he could observe his practice. After watching for a while, the teacher saw that the old swimmer was trying too hard, so he told the man to relax. But the swimmer found even that simple instruction hard to follow. When he tried to relax, his mind drifted and his body slumped. When he tried to focus, his mind and body became too tight. Finally, the teacher asked him, "You do know how to swim, don't you?" "Of course," the man replied, better than anyone." "Does the ability to swim come from holding your muscles completely tense?" his teacher asked. "Or completely loose?" "Neither," the old swimmer answered. "You have to find a balance between tension and relaxations." "Good," his teacher continued. "So now let me ask you, when you are swimming, if your muscles are too tense, are you creating the tightness in your limbs, or is someone else forcing you to tense up?" The man thought a bit before answering. Finally, he said, "No one outside of me is forcing me to tighten my muscles." The teacher waited a moment for the old swimmer to observe his own answer. Then he explained, "If you find your mind becoming too tight in meditation, you yourself are creating the tension. But if you let go of all tension, your mind becomes too loose and you become drowsy. As a swimmer, you learn how to find the proper muscular balance between tension and looseness. In meditation, you need to find the same equilibrium in your mind. If you don't find that equilibrium, you will never be able to realize the perfect balance within your own nature. Once you discover the perfect balance within your own nature, you will be able to swim through every aspect of your life the way you swim through water." In very simple terms, the most effective approach to meditation is to try your best without focusing too much on the results. Wisdom and method. When the mind is not altered, it is clear. When water is not disturbed, it is transparent. The ninth Gwalwang Karmapa, Mahamudra, the oceans of definitive meaning. Translated by Elizabeth M. Callahan. The specific instructions the teacher gave the old swimmer were actually part of a larger lesson in finding a balance between wisdom or philosophical understanding and method the practical applications of philosophy. Wisdom is pointless without a practical means of applying it. That's where method comes in. Using the method to recognize the mind. That's actually a good working definition of meditation. Meditation is not about blissing out, spacing out, or getting clear. Among the many terms I have heard from people in my travels around the world, meditation is actually a very simple exercise in resting in the natural state of your present mind and allowing yourself to be simply and clearly present to whatever thoughts, sensations, or emotions occur. Many people resist the idea of meditation because the image that first comes to mind involves hours and hours of sitting ramrod straight with leg crossed and an absolutely blank mind. None of this is necessary. First of all, sitting with your legs crossed and your spine straight takes some getting used to, especially in the West, where it's common to slouch in front of the computer or a TV. Second, it's impossible to keep your mind from generating thoughts, feelings, and sensation. Thinking is the mind's natural function, just it's the natural functions of the sun to produce light and warmth, or of a thunderstorm to produce lightning and rain. When I first began learning about meditation, I was taught that trying to suppress the natural function of my mind was at best a temporary solution. At worst, if I deliberately tried to change my mind, I would really just be reinforcing my own tendency to fixate on thoughts and feelings as inherently real. The mind is always active, always generating thoughts, just as the ocean constantly generates waves. We can't stop our thoughts any more than we can stop waves in the ocean. Resting the mind in its natural state is very different from trying to stop thoughts altogether. Buddhist meditation does not in any way involve attempting to make the mind a blank. There is no way to achieve thoughtless meditation. Even if you could manage to stop your thoughts, you wouldn't be meditating. You would be just drifting in a zombie-like state. On the other hand, you may find that as soon as you look at a thought, an emotion, or a sensation, it vanishes like a fish suddenly swimming away to deeper waters. That's okay too. In fact, it is great. As long as you are maintaining that sense of bare attention or awareness, even when thoughts, feelings, and so on elude you, you are experiencing the natural clarity and emptiness of your mind's true nature. The real point of meditation is to rest in bare awareness, whether anything occurs or not. Whatever comes up for you, just to be open, present to it, and let it go. And if nothing occurs, or thoughts, or so on vanish before you can notice them, just rest in that natural clarity. How much simpler could the process of meditation be? Another point to consider is that although we cling to ideas that some experiences are better, more appropriate, or more productive than others, there are, in fact, no good thoughts or bad thoughts. They are only thoughts. As soon as one bunch of gossipy neurons starts producing signals that we translate as thoughts or feelings, another group start commenting, "Oh, that was vengeful thought. What a bad person you are." Or, "You are so afraid. You must really be incompetent." Meditation is really a process of non-judgmental awareness. When we meditate, we adopt the objective perspective of scientists toward our own subjective experience. This might not be easy at first. Most of us are trained to believe that if we think something is good, it is good. And if we think something is bad, it is bad. But as we practice simply watching our thoughts come and go, such rigid distinctions begin to break down. Common sense will tell us so many mental events arising and vanishing in the space of a minute can't all possibly be true. If we continue to simply allow ourselves to be aware of the activity of our minds, we'll be gradually come to recognize the transparent nature of the thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions we once considered solid and real. It is as though layers of dust and dirt were slowly being wiped away from the surface of a mirror. As we grow accustomed to looking at the clear surface of our minds, we can see through all the gossip about who and what we think we are and recognize the shining essence of our true nature. Physical posture. Great wisdom abides in the body. The Hevajra Tantra, translated by Elizabeth M. Callahan. The Buddha taught that the body is the physical support for the mind. The relationship between them is like the relationship between a glass and the water it contains. If you set a glass down on the edge of a table or on top of something that isn't flat, the water will shift around or possibly spill. But if you set the glass on a flat, stable surface, the water will remain perfectly still. Simply, the best way to allow the mind to come to rest is to create a stable physical posture. In his wisdom, the Buddha provided instructions for aligning the body in a balanced way that allows the mind to remain relaxed and alert at the same time. Over the years, this physical alignment has become known as the 7-point posture of Vairochana, an aspect of the Buddha that represents enlightened form. The first point of the posture is to create a stable basis for the body, which means, if possible, crossing your legs so that each foot rests on the opposite thigh. If you can't do this, you can just cross one foot on top of the opposite thigh, resting the other beneath the opposite thigh. If neither position is comfortable, you can simply cross your legs. You can even sit comfortably in a chair, with your feet resting evenly on the floor. The goal is to create a physical foundation that is simultaneously comfortable and stable. If you feel great pain in your legs, you won't be able to rest your mind because you will be too preoccupied by the pain. That's why there are so many options available concerning this first point. The second point is to rest your hands in your lap just below your navel, with the back of one hand resting in the palm of the other. It doesn't matter which hand is placed on the top of other. You can switch their positions at any time during your practice. If, for instance, the covered palm gets hot after a long time, it's also fine to simply lay your hands palm down over your knees. The third point is to allow a bit of a space between your upper arms and your torso. The classic Buddhist texts call this holding your arms like a vulture, which can easily be mistaken for stretching your shoulder blades as if you were some sort of predatory bird. In fact, one day while I was teaching in Paris, I happened to be walking through a park when I saw a man sitting cross-legged on the ground, repeatedly flapping his shoulders forward and back. As I passed him, he recognized that I was a monk. The red robes are pretty much giveaway, and asked him, "Do you meditate?" "Yes," I replied. "Do you have any problems?" he asked. "Not really," I told him. We stood for a moment smiling at each other. It was a nice, sunny day in Paris, after all. And then he said, "I like meditation very much, but there's one instruction that really drives me crazy." Naturally, I asked him what it was. "It is the positions of the arms," he replied, a little embarrassed. "Really?" I replied. "Where did you learn about meditations?" "From a book," he answered. I asked him what the book had said about the positions of the arms. "It said you should hold your arm like a vulture's wings," he replied, at which point he started flapping his shoulders back and forth, as I would seen him do when I first approached. After watching him flap for a couple of seconds, I asked him to stop. "Let me tell you something," I said. "The real point of that instruction is to keep a little bit of space between your arms and your torso, just enough to make sure that your chest is open and relaxed, so that you can breathe nice and freely. Vultures at rest always have a little bit of space between their wings and their bodies. That's really what the instruction means. There is no need to flap your arms. After all, you are just trying to meditate. You are not trying to fly." The essence of this point of physical postures is to find a balance between your shoulders so that one is not dipping below the other, while keeping your chest open to allow yourself some breathing room. Some people have very big arms or very big torsos, especially if they have spent a lot of time working out at the gym. If you happen to fall into this category, don't strain yourself to artificially maintain a bit of space between your arms and chest. Just allow your arms to rest naturally in a way that doesn't constrict your chest. The fourth point of the physical posture is to keep your spine as straight as possible. As the classic texts say, like an arrow. But here again, it is important to find a balance. If you try to sit up too straight, you will end up leaning backward, your whole body shaking with tension. I have seen this happen many times with students who are overly concerned with having an absolutely erect spine. On the other hand, if you just let yourself slouch, you will almost certainly end up compressing your lungs, which will make it harder to breathe, as well as squashing various internal organs, which can be a source of physical discomfort. The fifth point involves letting the weight of your head rest evenly on your neck so that you are not crushing your windpipe or straining so far backward that you compress the cervical vertebrae, the 7 little bones at the top of your spinal cord, which is vital in transmitting neuronal signals from the lower parts of your body to your brain. When you find a position that's right for you, you will probably notice that your chin is tilting just slightly more toward your throat than it ordinarily does. If you have ever sat in front of a computer for hours and hours with your head tipped slightly backward, you will immediately understand how much better you will feel by making this simple adjustment. The sixth point concerns the mouth, which should be allowed to rest naturally so that your teeth and lips are very slightly parted. If possible, you can allow the tip of your tongue to gently touch the upper palate just behind the teeth. Don't force the tongue to touch your palate. Just allow it to rest there gently. If your tongue is too short to reach the palate without strain, don't worry. The most important thing is to allow the tongue to rest naturally. The last point of the meditation posture involves the eyes. Most people who are new to meditation feel more comfortable keeping their eyes closed. They find it easier that way to allow the mind to rest and to experience a sense of peace and tranquility. This is fine at the beginning. One of the things I learned early on, however, is that keeping the eyes closed makes it easier to become attached to an artificial sense of tranquility. So, eventually, after a few days of practice, it's better to keep your eyes open when you meditate so that you can stay alert, clear, and mindful. This doesn't mean glaring straight ahead without blinking, but simply leaving your eyes open as they normally are throughout the day. The 7-point posture of Vairocana is really a set of guidelines. Meditation is a personal practice. Everyone is different. The most important thing is to find for yourself the appropriate balance between tension and relaxations. There's also a short 2-point meditation posture, which can be adopted at times when it may be inconvenient or impossible to settle fully into the more formal 7-point posture. The instructions are very simple. Just keep your spine straight and the rest of your body as loose and relaxed as possible. The 2-point meditation posture is very useful throughout the day while going about your daily activities like driving, walking down the street, grocery shopping, or making dinner. This 2-point posture in itself almost automatically produces a sense of relaxed awareness. And the best part is that when you assume it, no one will even notice that you are meditating at all. Mental posture. If the mind itself that is twisted into knots is loosened, it is undoubtedly freed. Saraha, Doha for the people. translated by Elizabeth M. Callahan. The same principles behind finding a relaxed and alert physical posture apply to finding the same sort of balance within your mind. When your mind is poised naturally between relaxation and alertness, its innate qualities spontaneously emerge. This was one of the things I learned during those 3 days I spent sitting alone in my retreat room, determined to observe my mind. As I sat there, I kept remembering how my teacher had told me that when water becomes still, the silt, mud, and other sediment gradually separates from the water and settles to the bottom, giving you a chance to see the water and whatever passes through it very clearly. In the same way, if you remain in a state of mental relaxation, the mental sediment of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions naturally subsides, and the mind's innate clarity is revealed. Just as in the case of physical posture, the essential point of mental posture is to find a balance. If your mind is too tight or too focused, you will end up becoming anxious over whether you are being a good meditator. If your mind is too loose, you will either get carried away by distractions or fall into a kind of dullness. You want to find a middle way between perfection driven tightness and a kind of disenchanted, oh no, I've got to sit down and meditate type of dreariness. The ideal approach is to give yourself the freedom to remember that whether your practice is good or not doesn't really matter. The important point is the intention to meditate. That alone is enough.